James, I've always been fascinated when actors begin their careers. Now, I know you had dropped out of prep school with your parents' approval to head to New York. And weren't you only 17 when you arrived in
Yeah.
the Big Apple?
Yep.
What were those first few weeks like?
Oh dear, boy. Exciting. You know, I had been to New York a couple of times before that, driving through. And when I got down there, my sister lived down there. And when I got down there, it was in the late 70s, and New York was a tremendously exciting place, you know. And for me, I'd grown up in a fairly rural area up in Massachusetts. And being in the city and such a vibrance, and I was tremendously excited about it and curious about it. I mean, you know, it's funny, I didn't really have any idea what it was I wanted to do there. You know, I didn't really have any plans. I've never been much of a planner. And so it was really just sort of finding my way and finding what direction I wanted to go in and what I wanted to do.
We talked before about how people recognize you from movies, and before I asked you about Pretty in Pink and roles where you played pretty much villains. There's another movie I had a question about. I was watching Wall Street the other day. What kind of feedback did you get from attorneys after that film came out?
It's I had met with an attorney to do some research for the film, and it's funny, I never actually spoke to him again after I did the picture, and I wonder whether he was tremendously disappointed or angry after he saw the film. But not much. I mean, I don't know many attorneys. I know my attorney, but I don't know many attorneys, so I didn't really get much. But the thing that really surprised me about that is that the amount of people that saw the picture, and I was very lucky in that I had a very small role, and I only had about 3 scenes, but they just happened to come at the right time in the film. It's sort of a turning point in the picture, so I was fairly assured that I wasn't going to get cut out of it. And I wasn't, and it was amazing. People would, you know, the thing that I got in interviews after that was, so what's it like to work with Oliver Stone, and you know, and it always surprised me because I only worked a day and a half on the picture, you know, and yet I think because of the fact that it really hit right at that time, there were several attorneys, very high-profile attorneys that were indicted for insider trading and so on, and I think that. And so I think that's why it sort of got a certain amount of light shed on it that wouldn't have otherwise. You know?
I was reading an old interview with Harrison Ford from when Star Wars was made, and he commented on what a very frustrating experience it was to make that film because the actors had no idea how the effects were going to look like.
Wasn't like that on this. It wasn't like that at all on this, and it was actually one of the reasons why it was when I first had met, because when I first read the script, I thought, well, that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be Kurt and I sort of jumping up and down in front of a blue screen, you know, and sort of standing there with our eyes, you know, and our mouths sort of agape, staring at absolutely nothing. And when I met with Roland for the first time, the director, it really, he likes working with practicals on the set, you know, and as much there live as possible. And that excited me, because I mean, I just knew that was going to make it so much fun and so exciting to shoot, just because so much of what we were going to be doing was actually going to be happening there, and so much of what we were going to be looking at was going to be happening there. And it wasn't just going to be a matter of backdrops and so on. It was going to be moving and thriving all around us. And it was like that on the set. I mean, of course, a certain amount of it was done with special effects and opticals after the fact, but and it is an interesting process to go and shoot a film, and then they go and shoot another film afterwards with miniatures and optical effects and different things like that. But it was amazing the amount of stuff that was done there on the set live.
When you're, I mean, this is a very big budget film. As an actor, when you're standing out there in the middle of the desert on this big platform with thousands of extras in front of you, like what kind of thoughts are going through your mind?
It's hot. When's lunch? The same things I think that were going through the mind of whoever the hell it was I was playing, I think. You know, I mean, it was such a spectacle just to shoot. And I don't know, I haven't seen the picture in its end result, so I don't know whether it turned out that way on the screen as well, but it was such a spectacle to shoot. And I think that it made all of our work so much easier that way, because when you did come over the crest of a hill and open your eyes and just look at something, we were all quite awestruck with, I mean, I remember the first day we drove out miles out into the middle of this desert, and there was this installations that they had set up with, huge tents and thousands of people and trucks and trailers and motorhomes and just a chaos and this sort of, huge ant city. And we got into makeup and wardrobe and everything, and we jumped in dune buggies that were just screaming all over the place, and we jumped in these dune buggies and then drove another mile or two further out into the desert, over these sand dunes that just are, waves and waves and waves of sand. And we pull up, and this is the very first day of shooting, we pull up and where our first scene is, and there are, I think there were 2,000 extras that day, strung out over, 3 miles of this crest of these sand dunes, with, production assistants every couple hundred yards with megaphones and so on, and huge beasts in costume, and everybody in costume, and we're looking out, standing there with all these extras behind it, looking out over this village that they have built in the middle of this town, with several story buildings with bridge work and infrastructure and huge gates, and that was our first day, and it didn't stop from there. I mean, it literally didn't stop from there. That night we shot a full-blown sandstorm. So it was a spectacle to shoot. It was like an amusement park ride to shoot.
I'm doing a story right now on when actors are called back to reshoot footage or maybe change an ending. In your career, how many times has that happened when the studios come back and said, let's reshoot this or change it? Maybe Wolf, I don't know what the story was with that.
The only films that I have ever done that have not had some sort of reshoots, whether I was involved or not, it doesn't make any difference, but the only films I have done that have not had reshoots were simply films that just couldn't afford it, where there just wasn't the money for it. If given the opportunity, I think anybody would like to be able to go back again and screw around with something. Whether it's to improve upon what it is they've got, whether it's to change something, whether it's to throw out something entirely, or whether it's just to tweak something a little bit. But the only films that I've shot that they haven't done anything afterwards have been films where there simply wasn't the funds to do it.